Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be with you again, and I hope I am audible and visible. And
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed the session, the other session we had the other day. And today I'm going to show you something else. It's a short presentation, and I'll be with you for about half an hour maximum. And I just returned from a site which I am presently working on. It is again, I would call it as part of my social responsibility because this site is located in my village where my great grandparents, my grandparents, my parents, they were all born and brought up. So it so happened. See, I was born there, but I was brought up in the north of India. So once in 3 4 years, my parents would bring me to this village to visit their parents. So that's how I learned about this village. And when I became an architect, I got interested in the history of my family because we had a very old house. So in my first year, when I visited, I started documenting my ancestors' house, and that led to many interesting events where my grandfather took me to uh, a house which was about 30 40 kilometers away, where only the plinth existed. The house had collapsed, and he told me that belonged to someone who was five generation behind us. Behind him even. So I started collecting history of my family from eight generation behind us. Today I have a huge chart of. I mean, I got interested in my second year of architecture, and I have a big chart of family members spread all over the world. And I got interested in all the houses which appeared and vanished over the period of time. My house also, my grandparents' house also vanished because it grew old and it had to be demolished. So that also doesn't exist now. But what has continued to remain in that village is the temple, which is almost 250 years old. So I'm going to show you that temple. And in that village, there are about 100 to 150 families. And my family is one of that, and my grandparents. Now my uncles live there. I designed a couple of houses there for my uncles and my cousins on the riverside. There's a river there. But this temple, which is 250 years old, is still intact. But it had some problem 2 years ago when the river water rose because of flooding. There was heavy rain, and in fact, cloudburst in that area, and the river water rose by almost 40 feet from the existing level, and that many of the houses submerged, but this and water reached till the plinth of this temple. So I'm going to show you this temple and what kind of restoration work I have done and what is happening right now. So let me share my presentation. This
Yes.
image is that of the temple, and that the temple, the small structure which you see in the foreground is actually the temple, and that larger structure, the canopy which you see, is new and just recently completed. That's the one which I designed, that canopy. And then you see a golden flag post. That's also something which I did a couple of years back, as because I got involved in the temple's work. It's a kind of charity work. Because I'm part of that village, I keep helping the people to do all this. So this is the foreground. This structure which you see is a timber frame roof and local laterite stone masonry work, and this has been there for almost 250 years. But just in front of this, there was a canopy which actually started collapsing because of the flood. That's what happened. That's how I came in. And the structure could not be retained. It was a smaller canopy. And I must tell you the role of this canopy. This canopy is used for on festival occasion, when it is very common to bring elephants to the temple. I don't know how many of you have seen elephant or actually touched an elephant. I am not very too sure if America has elephants. I'm not too sure. But then elephants are part of Indian life, especially the temple life. Elephants are domesticated and they are decorated and they are brought in to the temple with the temple deity on a procession on top of the elephant. That's how it happens. And then the deity is taken around the temple and finally worshipped inside the temple. So this is what I'll show you what happened in this. So this is again, once again, I'm referring to your learning objectives. So This is how to create meaningful architectural space for the society or for the people. So how I got involved in this kind of work. This is the river. It's a beautiful river, perennial river called Periyar, and this is my village. Not the other side of the river. This side, I have taken this from my village side, uh, and this has been like this for centuries actually. And the settlement called Kuttamasheri, it is on this side where my house is there. So, and this is that location of that temple. As you can see, this is the third district I am talking about. My location is Thrissur. Day before yesterday, I showed you a project in Palakkad, and today's project is in this location near Kochi. You must have heard of Cochin, the harbor town in Kerala, very famous. And this temple is fairly close to Cochin. So this is the location. And this is the temple that you see. On the left is the image of the temple almost 35 years ago, 40 years ago. On the right is image which I clicked last week. You can see the temple structure on the right is intact with some minor changes as compared to the previous image. So traditional architecture at that public level, let us say public architecture, traditional architecture is a time and place adaptive in nature, and conserving this is actually the society's duty. Individual houses people construct and demolish and refurbish, it goes on by individuals, but what belongs to the community needs to be taken care of by the community. So that is the objective of conserving public buildings like temples. So you can see it almost looks like a house actually. It's a very humble structure, and inside there is a room space where God's sculpture is kept and worship is done. So let's go forward. So this was the temple built sometimes in AD 1700s. Exact date is not known, but this also I have conjectured after discussions with my grandparents, and my great grandfather was apparently part of the administration of this temple in his time. Those records were available. So, and since those days, someone in my family, someone or the other is involved as part of the administration of this temple. My uncles were involved. Now I have got involved for designing and sort of conservation. You can see the temple walls are very bare, and the grilled area which you see there, the timber grills, that is the entrance. And the right in front is that canopy which started collapsing, as I told you. So this is that part of the canopy you can see. This temple belongs to the village of some 100 families who live around this. So, and this is what happens in the village. Almost every week, village folks celebrate during dusk time, that is after sunset. It's a wonderful sight. This image is actually almost 25, 30-year-old celebration in the village. Almost every week, some occasion is there when evening lamps are lit by children, women, they all come, light lamps, and there is celebration all around. And people donate for this cause. This is a event which keeps happening. And it looks even beautiful even today, but when there was no electricity in the village, it used to be fascinating without electricity to see this kind of work in progress. So this is another view of what used to happen about 20. Oil lamps are lit actually. You can see oil lamps are hung from the eaves, from the rafters, on the floor, on the ground, all around the temple. So, and these lighting of lamp is actually a ritual which is on different days. There are auspicious days for doing all this. Some people on their wedding occasions say that, okay, we will light up the temple, instead of lighting up their homes, they would light up the temple. People do all this and contribute to the cause. So this is the structural canopy in front of the temple, which had survived for almost 2 centuries, but this started collapsing, and the structure had a problem because at this, if you can see my cursor, up to this level, there was water when water rose in the river 2 years back. That was in 2018. Once again, there was a flood in 2019. So people got worried because this canopy became little, but you can see this was the canopy actually. This traditional flagpole, it's a traditional flagpole. It looks golden in nature. Gold plated covering is done on this. Inside this is a piece of timber, that is teak. A tall teak tree is used as an inner filling material, and on that gold plated brass work is done. And this is a flagpole. You can see a rope going around it. And whenever there is temple festival, they will raise a flag on top of this, the temple flag, so that from far the villagers can see that today there is a temple festival. So this structure is a very small structure. And when the festivals used to happen, elephants used to come from here. Elephant will come and go around the temple and come back here, and elephant would bow to the deity. They are trained elephant, they would do all this. But when this started collapsing, they had a problem. So you can see how it had to be demolished slowly. So this is what I supervised, and I redesigned a new canopy for this. It started when I was doing this work, COVID started. So the entire work had to be done under strict. For almost 2 months, there was no work in the beginning, but then the work started. So this whole reconstruction happened during COVID period, and the inaugural function happened just about 1 month back, 1 month ago. So this is the procedure of gradually demolishing the structure. See, look at this rafter and the truss work. This is 250-year-old, which had to be removed because these pillars were developing cracks. So then they were gradually dismantled like this, and then the masonry work was removed. Structure was brought down, and this is what I proposed. This was a proposal I gave as a larger canopy, and you can see here the scale is that of an elephant. This is a digital elephant, as you can see. The scale had to be that of an elephant because an elephant had to stand inside this. There were certain rituals which they perform with maybe more than one elephant. Usually one elephant comes, but sometimes they get 2 or 3 elephants also to do some performances. It's not like circus, but some kind of rituals with the deities on the elephant. You will see all that. I'll show you a video of that. So this is a kind of design which I prepared with the temple in the background and the canopy in the foreground and the little office building there. So now comes once again that very important rituals which are associated with traditional architecture in India. Before you start a foundation, you have to do a traditional ritual worship of the foundation stone. What you see on the extreme right is the foundation stone, the first stone which is laid. So before you lay the first stone for the foundation, there is a ritual of worshipping the stone. I mean, this may sound very strange to you, but it is a ritual all over India, not even for temple, but for any house, any construction. The first stone is always worshipped like this. There are several rituals, chantings go on for several hours, and finally that stone is put into the foundation pit by someone who is the senior most person in the village, or or the head of the family in case of a residence. So this is the and in this case, since it was a temple, all the villagers would assemble. So you can see here the village folks have assembled. The foundation stone is ready. Here you can see it on the extreme left where I am showing the cursor. After the worship, it is kept there, and then the stone is laid into the pit. The pit is prepared, and you can see the stone is put into the pit. Flowers are put on it. People throw shower of flowers. People come and do, and then put soil as part of the activity. And then, of course, construction begins. This construction is done in new material. It's a reinforced concrete column and foundation work and reinforced concrete roof, because I thought there should be more permanence and more permanent structure which is required, which could last for maybe another 100 or 200 years. So I decided to do this as a design. The view I had shown you earlier. So this is what happened as development. And this was the completed canopy, the new festival canopy. So you can see the canopy itself is not as humble as the temple itself, but it is proportionate to the overall temple. I did a measured drawing of the entire temple premises to get the proportions right visually when you look at the temple and the canopy. And of course, it had also to be proportionate to the functions which the activities the elephant has to perform under this. So this is a new festival canopy. And then as a part of the continuous activity, I suggested that the walls were looking very bare. So I suggested that, see, I indulge in a lot of artwork. I do painting and sketches, and it's my hobby. So I suggested that I would do wall paintings on the walls, depicting the history of Krishna's life. This temple is devoted to Krishna, Lord Krishna. You can look up on who Lord Krishna is. You must have heard of this name, or if you are aware of International Society of Consciousness of Krishna, you would have heard about this deity. One of the very popular gods among the Indian pantheon. So I suggested that there could be very interesting wall murals on the temple walls. So I'm working on them. I think it'll be a 2-year long project. I have just started. In another 2 years time, I expect all these panels which you see here to be full of paintings or relief work. I'm still working on that. So this is the paint. These are the initial work which I did as painting the lamps, because they light up these lamps. So lamp as an element on the wall. So this is the end of today's presentation. So I'd like to show you a video. It has just started, the work of conserving and adding to the temple's walls as part of the temple's conservation work. In future, of course, it may take quite some time, couple of months later, or maybe next year, or whenever you are around, if Professor Joseph agrees, maybe I would be able to show you how the development happened later on. Today, now I will actually try to show you a video. This is how the lighting happens of the lamps. These are the songs which happen in the temple in the background. This is the painting work which I have just started, mural work on the walls. It's quite a time-consuming job, standing there and working on the wall.
What kind of paint is that? How does it withstand the rain and the
They are
humidity?
I have used weather coat emulsion paints, which will stand the weather. You get these paints from Berger paints are there. So I get this. They'll stand the sunshine and the rain. But then rain doesn't fall on this wall because of the roof, the protection. You can see the wall is intact after 200 years. Nothing much has happened.
Is the wall white paint? Is that synthetic paint or is that lime?
Actually, it used to be lime, but now for the last couple of years, they are doing synthetic on the lime. Now this is the occasion, inaugural day of the canopy. This is how the elephant arrives. This is a ritual which happens in all temples in India, or especially in Kerala. The deity is on top of the elephant. You can see that person is holding the deity. So that is it. So you have seen the present state of the temple and what many things will happen in the coming year or two, and I would be, hopefully I'll be able to show if you are around, or if you follow me on Facebook, you will keep seeing these updates very often, because the temple also has a Facebook page, so they also keep uploading all this because they want to keep in touch with the present generation. So they do it through social media. All these temple activities appear on social media so that the people around the temple keep coming to the temple, So this is what is happening. So
A few years ago, when I taught this class, it included a field trip to India. And one of the highlights of that trip was in Pondicherry, where we visited the temple. And it so happened that that day the elephant was visiting as well.
wow.
And so the students got blessings from the elephant, which was
Wonderful.
very
Yeah,
interesting for them.
that happens when if you are coming down, they bless you actually. The elephant will put the trunk on your head and bless you, something like that. Yeah.
So any questions or comments, or what are your thoughts on how architecture is part of rituals and how architecture is part of social ceremonies and social gatherings?
Yeah, something very interesting which I would like to share with you is that none of this is taught in schools of architecture. About these rituals, about this traditional systems, the need for redesigning them or continuing. These are not part of the syllabus of the schools of architecture. So, but then architects who get into profession like me, I got involved in this. So all these works are generally done by traditional local carpenters, masons, and local traditional architects, not the mainstream architects like me and who are trained in. So I have got interested in this. I am involved in this, but these are not actually part of our education. Though this is so rich in India, but unfortunately now, as I mentioned in the last meeting, Indian knowledge system is getting attention, and institutions are taking up this as course in masters level. So that's how it is.
Another way of looking at this sort of thing is that in many traditional cultures, architecture is kind of the backdrop for activities that people do every day, whether it's religious or social or cultural. It's almost like the stage set. And the reason for it, and because it's a stage set for so many rituals, it has to be a meaningful stage set, not just a backdrop that's superficial.
True. And these are issues beautifully addressed by architect Paul Oliver in his encyclopedia.
And something that might look plain, ordinary, or chaotic to somebody who doesn't know anything about it may actually be extremely symbolic, extremely meaningful, and extremely orderly to once you're initiated into the system that created it. And so it's often architects look at buildings and judge them and say, hey, oh, that's all, this chaos. There's no order to that. And that's really a very opinion that is very uneducated.
Yeah, actually, in this process of having taken up the mural work, painting work, I am learning a lot by sitting with the priest of the temple, because he's telling me what I should paint, the themes to be painted, and he's giving me the history of the temple, the history of the culture, story of Krishna. He says which are the important parts to be painted, and so that people can learn from them. The objective is that the future generation, children of the locality, all those who visit the temple, learn from whatever is there on the walls. It's not just symbolic, but it's for learning or getting knowledge about the the cultural background of that settlement for the last hundreds of years. So it's pretty interesting. I'm also learning in the process.
I wonder if Michelangelo had similar conversations when he did all his murals and sculptures. And
I know, but then of course, at local level they would have had conversation. If it was definitely not Zoom conversations.
Yeah, questions or comments?
Can you tell us a little bit about what the paintings represent
Uh, what is it?
on the the red ones on the temple that y'all are adding currently?
Yes, what I'm going to add.
What do they, those red verticals represent?
Those actually, if you had looked closely, you saw in the video one person lighting the lamps. So these lamps are vertically placed on a panel. So I created a backdrop for those lamps as a red paint as a background, and a lamp on the top of those verticals. So when they light up all the vertical, there are about 6 lamps on that vertical panel. So they light up all that, and between 2 panels there will be a painting or a mural work in future, which will tell a story actually. So there are actually 74 panels as of now outside, and there will be about 24 panels inside the temple. So 74 plus 24, almost 98, 100 panels would have to be made in the next 200 years, which will depict the story of Krishna's life, because this is at Krishna temple. Not only Krishna's life, and I don't know if you have heard of Gita or the Song of God. It's called Bhagavad Gita, which is a very sacred book for Hindus, which is actually Krishna's philosophy in the form of poetry. So it talks about what kind of way of life a human being should lead on earth. So all those issues can be painted in the form of visuals, and that is where I am getting some lessons from the priest of the temple, who is actually advising me on what imagery I can use to depict those. I can show you 1 or 2 examples. Let me just 1 or 2 examples which I have just created. Please hold on.
You remember the video we saw about Borobudur in Indonesia, and the carved panels along the stupa walls that related stories and incidents and ideas that connected with the teaching of Buddha? This is a similar kind of situation, except instead of carvings, will be paintings.
I know there's different meanings for the colors in Indian culture. Is that going to be applied to your murals?
Yes, colors have great significance especially in the art in India, culture and art in India. So those days they used to use natural colors and dyes. There are some certain specific colors they used to use, but today all kinds of colors are available in different mediums. So, but the traditional colors could be used. I am trying to get the list of traditional colors, and I'll just show you a sample of what I am doing.
Yeah, when we talk about traditional art, in many cultures, colors and symbols have a lot of meaning.
So this is what is being planned. This is an image. So you have here, this is Ganesha, one of the deities. The historic, the legend says that this sage who is sitting here, his sage name was Vyasa. So he related the story of ancient India and ancient Krishna's life to Ganesha, who wrote it down. Ganesha, you can see, an elephant-headed god. So that's the significance of elephants being brought into temple. Ganesha is considered as elephant-headed god. So he is writing the story which is being recited by this sage sitting inside a cave. So this is one of the first image which I have created. I'm just working on this. And there is a statement here below. It is in Sanskrit, the ancient Indian language, which says, Lekhako Bharatyasasya Bhavatvam Gananayaka Mavaya Prochamanasya Manasa Kalpitascha Sa. It means that Ganesha is being requested to write the story. So he's requesting. So all the panels will have such statements with this kind of decorative elements, and they will appear on all the 100 panels outside and inside the temple. So this is what is being planned. It is work in progress, and I have to sort of figure out how to put this into action over there.
Like I was saying earlier, particularly in religious iconography and religious art, colors and symbols have a lot of meaning. and perhaps in Hindu art, the colors, certain gods, certain figures are represented, always use a certain color to represent them.
Yes.
Like Krishna is always blue,
Yes.
or some version of
Yes.
blue. Am I right?
Yes. Yes.
Right. But even in Christian art, when you look at paintings of saints in Italy or various Catholic countries, people couldn't read and write, but they could understand these things through symbols. So if a saint is holding a key, he's most probably Saint Peter because he's holding the key to heaven.
Okay.
Right. And so people started to understand and read these statues and paintings from these symbols. If a saint was holding a bird, or had a dog, it was probably St. Francis because St. Francis was kind to animals. So it's interesting how different cultures around the world have adapted similar kinds of things to express ideas.
And in many ways, in these public buildings, art and sculpture was used to transmit knowledge about the culture to future generations. So people tell stories as new generations appear. They are told stories using these sculptures and paintings by parents and grandparents. So that's how each generation learns about the history of culture of their settlement and their religion and their belief systems. So that's how it is.
So anything else?
This might be an off-topic question, but where do you guys, like, what is the normal housing for elephants? You know, because obviously here we don't keep elephants.
Oh, that's wonderful question. There are elephant camps in the state because there are a lot of elephants which are used, and there are special camps for them. There are some wonderful settlements for elephants in 2-3 zones of Kerala, where they are taken very good care of. And monsoon is the time when they are given a lot of rest because they won't have any activity in temples. Because monsoon is there for almost 3 to 4 months in Kerala, heavy monsoon. So all these elephants are brought to their respective camps and they are taken care of. It's called a healthcare camp for elephants because they are fed with a lot of medicinal herbs, and that also becomes a ritual actually in this temple where there's a temple in my town where almost 150 elephants are brought on one particular day just before monsoon, and that is usually in the month of July, end of June or July, and the entire city turns up to feed the elephants with these medicine balls, they call it. They take jaggery. I don't know if you know what jaggery is, like brown sugar. Not that is sugar, but it's sweet. Jaggery is made from sugar cane. Jaggery and rice, and they make a ball out of it after cooking, and each elephant is fed one ball. So children, ladies, they all queue up to, and they love it. The elephants love it. So they would happily take these balls. And so people actually, you have to buy a ball to give this elephant. So that money goes to the temple. So it's a full day ritual. So they are fed with these medicinal herbs, etc. And for almost a month, there is a camp during monsoon. And then they are taken back to these elephants are owned by different individuals, sometimes by the temples. So they take care of them. And of course, there's a lot of animal activists also who come into play if somebody is not, some elephant is not being taken care of. There are such issues also because, people try to exploit the situation. That's also there. But elephants are revered animals in Indian subcontinent as a very...
Yeah, I know.
Very intelligent also. Elephants are very intelligent to communicate with. They are really very intelligent.
I know of an architectural project. I think it was in Thailand, and I need to search for the link, of an architect-designed elephant shelter.
Yes.
The architects are involved not only in buildings for people, but also buildings for animals.
Yes.
I happened to have the good fortune of being in Thrissur when I went to visit Hari Mohan some years ago on the occasion of this festival when all the elephants come to this main temple. It was very impressive to see over 100 elephants all arrive one at a time, all decorated with lots of fanfare and music and all that.
I do have a video of that. I'll share it with you, Joe. You can pass it on to the students. It's a wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's crowds of people. The temple was just packed. Yeah. So
As a matter of fact, one more information. This elephant shelter has been a topic of BR's thesis in many schools of architecture here. And students design elephant shelters, where they are taken care of. It has been a very important, very popular topic among students for final year project.
yeah, in many parts of South Asia and Southeast Asia, elephants are an important part of rituals and ceremonies, particularly in India, Sri Lanka. In Thailand, they have also a little bit, but Thailand, mostly elephants are working animals in the forestry and other things. Okay, well, I think we will have no one has any more questions. We'll stop here and thank Professor Pillai for his 2 lectures, which were very interesting and also informative, and hopefully gives you a little bit more perspective into what architecture is about. It's not only about making pretty pictures or making some kind of sculptural form. It's also about expressing people's ideas. And so thank you, Harimohan, for your participation.
Thank you, Joe, for giving me this opportunity.
And for the links and all that I will share with the students later.
Thank you so much. Yeah.